Today you're going to learn about solving coin word problems. Try and visualize a piggy bank. You know how little kids always take the piggy bank and shake it up. What we're going to be telling you is what the total value is of every coin that's inside your piggy bank. What you have to figure out is how many of each type of coin we have. Charts are very helpful for coin problems. You're not always going to have a full chart, but the worst case scenario is you would have pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. It's very important to have the decimal correct between pennies and dimes because it will affect your answer. Pennies in cents are, like written in dollars, are 0.01, whereas a dime is 0.10. Nickels are also not 0.5. That would be a half dollar. Nickels are 0.05. Between the charts and the columns, value multiplied by amount is going to give you the total value. We're going to use the total value in order to set up your equation. You're going to add all of the total value items and set it to equal your complete value at the bottom. You are allowed to use calculators for this section. I use a flowchart to help decide what the x should be. You don't have to use a flowchart for problems that only have two. It might be easy for you to figure out. But when there are more than two coins, I think using a little flowchart is very helpful to figure out which value should be your x. Let's take a look at example number 1. It says a collection of dimes and nickels has a value of $4.90. That $4.90 is your complete value inside your piggy bank. That's going to go down in the bottom, $4.90. As soon as you read that first sentence, though, you can go ahead and start filling out your chart because you know a nickel has a value of 0.05 and you know a dime has a value of 0.10. So, to look at the amount, this is where it gets tricky. It says there are 20 more nickels than dimes. If you were doing a flowchart, the word nickels comes first and the word dimes comes second. Whatever is all the way to the right ends up being your x value. So when it says 20 more, that means plus, which means you're going to have x plus 20 nickels. That's going to follow in your chart under the amount. So we have x plus 20 for nickels and x for dimes. I do think it's helpful to list it also underneath for when you have to state your final answer. So x is going to be the number of dimes, and x plus 20 is going to give you your number of nickels. Remember, we talked about multiplying the two columns together to get that end box. 0.10 times x just gives us 0.10x. What we have to be careful about is when there's a plus or a minus, we need to make sure that we distribute, which means we're going to need parentheses. To set up the equation, we're going to add this box with this one and set it equal to the bottom. So, for our equation, we have 0.05 multiplied by the quantity x plus 20 plus 0.10x equals $4.90. Make sure you're exaggerating your decimal points when you're doing your problem to make sure you don't lose track of something. If we distribute 0.05 times x, that's going to give us 0.05x. If we multiply 0.05 times 20, that's going to give us a value of 1. The 0.10x, we're just going to keep it out at the end. An extra step that I like to put in there, I'm going to place in orange. I like to rewrite the problem with the like terms right next to each other. It's not a step that's necessary, but I do think it's helpful. 0.05x and 0.1x can be combined. That's going to give us 0.15x plus 1 equals $4.90. If we subtract 1 from both sides, we need to make sure that we line up things correctly. The 1 would come in front of a decimal point. We have 0.15x equals $3.90. When you're using your calculator to do this, the 3.90 is going to go into your calculator first, and the 0.15 is going to go after your division bar. This is going to give us a value of 26. The question is, what does that really mean? 26, if we look at how we defined our variable, is the number of dimes. To come up with the number of nickels, we need to add 26 and 20 together, which is going to give us 46. So in our end answer, you can just say there are 26 dimes and 46 nickels. The nice thing about these types of questions is that you'll know right away if you didn't do something correctly because you have to come up with whole numbers when you solve for your x. Usually it's an issue of negatives. Let's take a look at a second problem. This one says 86 coins made up of only dimes and quarters amount to $14.60. How many of each type of coin are there? So the $14.60 is going to be your complete value. That's going to go down in the bottom. It says you're limited to dimes and quarters. The value of a dime is 10 cents, and the value of a quarter is 25 cents. This problem's a little bit different than the other one, because we only know how many total coins we have. It doesn't say that there's an equal number of dimes and quarters. Visualize a piggy bank. If there are X dimes in it, how many quarters are there if there are 86 total coins? It's what's left, and the word left implies subtraction. So if we put X for dimes, we have 86 minus X for quarters. Now, you may be asking yourself, can you put the X in quarters instead, and the 86 minus X for the dimes? And the answer to that question is yes. It just means you would be solving for quarters first, and then dimes second, but the value remains unchanged. When we multiply across, we're going to have 0.10x. On the bottom, we're going to have 0.25, and then we need to make sure that we distribute 86 minus x. So x is our number of dimes, and 86 minus x are the number of quarters. Just like the other problem, we're going to be adding the two values to equal the bottom. So we've got 0.10x plus 0.25 multiplied by 86 minus x equals 1460. By distributing the quarter into 86, we're going to get 21.5 plus a negative 0.25x. You don't need to change it to plus negative. I'm only doing that so that we can rearrange the like terms. If we put 0.10x together with negative 0.25x, that's going to give us a negative value, which makes students nervous, but it's going to be okay. This is going to give us negative 0.15x. Then we have plus 21.5 equals 1460. If we subtract 21.5 from 14.6, we're also going to get a negative. This is why it really doesn't matter, is because what happens when you divide two negatives? It becomes positive. Your x value ends up being 46. So 46 is your number of dimes. 86 minus 46, which gives you 40, is your number of quarters. So that means that your answer is there are 46 dimes and 40 quarters. Let's take a look at a slightly more complicated example. This one says a paperboy collected $68.50 on his paper route. He had nickels, dimes, and quarters. He had 70 more nickels than quarters and 20 more dimes than nickels. How many of each type of coin did he have? Well, we know nickels are 0.05, and we know dimes are 0.10, and we know quarters are 0.25. This is more tricky though because there are three different types of coins. So doing a flow chart, it says nickels to quarters, but then on the second part, it says nickels to dimes. If we want to make just one flow chart, we need to look at the letter that shows up in both of them and put that in the middle. So the question is, which letter is that? That's right, the letter is the nickels. So we have nickels to quarters, and then we have dimes to nickels. The one that's all the way on the right-hand side, that's your x value, which means quarters is your x. So the next thing we need to define are your nickels. So if we look back at the problem, it says 70 more nickels than quarters. More than means plus, which means we've got x plus 70 quarters. If we backtrack to get dimes, it says we have 20 more dimes than nickels, but we have x plus 70 nickels. So if we have x plus 70 and we need 20 more than that, that's going to give us x plus 90. Our x will be our quarters, our dimes are x plus 90, and our nickels are x plus 70. In our total value column, we're going to need to multiply by the quantity of x plus 70. We'll need to multiply by the quantity x plus 90, and then we need to multiply by 0.25x. Just like all the other problems, we're going to be adding them together to equal the total on the bottom. So we have 0.05, and then in the quantity x plus 70, we have 0.10, and then x plus 90, plus 0.25x equals $68.50. To distribute, we'll have 0.05x. Be careful when you're multiplying the 0.05 times 70. Here we're going to get 3.5 plus 0.10x plus 9 plus 0.25x equals $68.50. If we rewrite things with variables on this all together, we'll put the 0.05x plus 0.10x plus 0.25x together, and then we'll put the 3.5 and the 9 all together on the end. By combining those together, we're going to get 0.4x plus 12.5 equals $68.50. If we subtract 12.5 from both sides, we're going to get 56 equals 0.4x. And then when we divide 56 by 0.4, we're going to get 140. So to get your final answer, we're going to plug back into our variable. So 140 is our number of quarters. To get the number of dimes, we need to add 90 to that. If we add 90 to 140, we're going to get 230 dimes. If we add 140 to the nickels, we get 210 nickels. This concept is going to take a lot of practice, and it's okay. We have plenty of time before there's a quiz.